Hi everyone, my name's Leanne and today I'm going to publicly shame myself. So I have a huge number of books on my TBR. I have over 200 unread books on my shelves. Mentally, I kind of separate them into two different sets of books. I have my normal TBR and then I have my Penguin English Library TBR. So I think of those as kind of two separate things. Either way, it's a huge TBR. So I am going to go back and take a look at the past few years of my book acquiring and see what I've got left still unread on my shelves from years gone by. So today we are going to look at the books I still have unread on my shelves from 2021. There are some books still on my shelves that I acquired prior to 2021, but they are by far classics. So again, kind of in a separate part of my brain. I'm not going to go into full detail on all of the books because there are quite a few, but I'm briefly going to tell you about my relationship to that book, how I got my hands on it, why I haven't read it yet, just very briefly. But before we get into the books themselves, I have some context and some stats. So 2021, before even looking at the numbers, know this was a really big book acquiring year for me. I changed company, so I started working at a new publisher. For half of the year I was in lockdown. I was still in Ireland. All I was doing was reading. I was reading really quickly. I was reading all of the time. So I was replenishing my shelves by ordering books online. But then for the second half of the year, I moved back to London and suddenly was able to go to amazing bookshops again and started buying more books there. So in 2021, I hauled 145 books. Of those 145 books, I read 106 of them, so 73%. 39 of those books remain unread, and I've unhauled 45 of the books that I acquired, but 9 of them I have unhauled having not read them. So of the 145 books I acquired in 2021, I still own 100 of them, and 30 of them are unread. 11 of those are adult fiction books, so let's start with those. A Song for Issy Bradley by Caris Bray. I read The Museum of You by this author and I absolutely loved it. So when I saw this one secondhand, I decided to pick up a copy of it. This was on a recent TBR jar video and I just didn't get round to reading it. But I definitely do still want to read this because I enjoyed another book by this author so much. Followers by Megan Angelo. So I have tried to read this before and I hit pause on it. I have read one other book from this author and it was very kind of middle of the park for me. But I think I do remember the concept of this book really appealing to me. So I will try and give it another go. And if I end up hitting pause on it again, I'll probably unhaul it. Home by Toni Morrison. So I have read 2 Toni Morrison books before and I think she is such a fantastic writer and I really wanted to collect her books in these editions of them. So I do remember finding this one secondhand and thinking, oh, I'm not sure when I'll find another one of these editions secondhand, so I'll pick it up. This one is quite short, so I really should read it soon. And then a similar kind of situation for My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. I just sort of decided that I wanted Daphne du Maurier's books in these editions. So when I saw this one secondhand, I decided to pick it up. I have read Jamaica Inn and I liked it. It's another one where I felt like for my own personal reading taste, it was kind of middle of the park, but I hear so many good things about My Cousin Rachel, particularly from Lauren over at Lauren in the Books. So I do think I will give this one a go. Us Three by Ruth Jones. So you may know Ruth Jones as obviously a novelist, but also a comedian, a TV show writer, most famously the co-writer of Gavin and Stacey. I read her book Never Greener quite a few years ago and really enjoyed it. So I definitely do want to try and read this one. The Summer Job by Lizzie Dent. So this is one where, because it's obviously quite seasonal, it's called The Summer Job. I feel like I have to read it in summer and then that time comes and then it passes. But definitely do want to read this. Angela Carter's Book of Fairy Tales. So this is an anthology of fairy tales collected and I think retold by Angela Carter, who is a writer that I have read a couple of books from. The one I enjoyed the most was her short story collection of fairy tale retellings, The Bloody Chamber. I have started reading this. So I started reading this, gosh, a couple of Halloweens ago now, and I do feel like it's one that I'm just gonna kind of dip in and out of, again, seasonally. So when it comes round to spooky season, I'll dip in and out of this. So I think this is one that I might read over a number of years as opposed to reading from cover to cover. Also left unread on my shelves is The Sea by Iris Murdoch. Kieran gifted this to me, I think for my birthday in 2021. And I'm sorry, Kieran, it's just bloody massive. It's so big. I will read this. I love this edition. Even though she's thick, she's so cute, you know, she's dinky. I do actually feel like I'm gonna absolutely love this book, and then I'm gonna have to tell Kieran that I absolutely loved it, and he's probably even forgotten that he got me this. And I'm gonna hate telling him that he's been right, but I do know he probably is right. I think listening to the audio of this may well be helpful, and I could read it for the upcoming Irish Readathon. There's a few other books as well here that I could read for the Irish Readathon, and I feel like if by the end of March I haven't read them, it's probably a sign that they shouldn't be on my shelves anymore. I definitely will read Sushi for Beginners by Marian Keyes. I always read a Marian Keyes book for the Irish Readathon. This is the next one on my list to read, so this will definitely be read by the end of March, if not sooner. I also have Last Ones Left Alive by Sarah Davis Goff. This is like an apocalyptic novel set in Ireland. I have briefly tried to read this before and couldn't quite get into it, so I definitely will give this another go. And again, if I feel like I hit pause on it, I will move on. I feel like this one I should definitely read for the Irish Readathon this year as well, and that is The End of the World is a Cul-de-sac by Louise Kennedy. So Louise Kennedy has become better known for her novel Trespasses, but this is a short story collection from her that I think I was sent by the publisher. I feel pretty confident that I will read this one for the Irish Readathon, so this will not be remaining on my TBR for much longer. The one poetry book that I have left unread from 2021 is Slug by Holly McNish. I love Holly McNish. She's one of my favourite poets, so I don't really understand why I haven't finished this book yet. I have read a little under half of it, and I think because it is a collection of poetry and also kind of essays / commentary around those poems, it felt like it was one that I could kind of dip in and out of, and somewhere along the way I just forgot to dip back in, but I definitely want to read this very soon. There are 7 non-fiction books left on my shelves unread. So the first of those is You Play the Girl by Karina Chicano. There is one particular secondhand bookshop in London that I gatekeep. I think a lot of people have this particular shop on their radar, but I think it is one of the best secondhand bookshops in the whole city. And I really distinctly remember going in there and just thinking, someone who has very similar reading tastes to me has just done a big donation here. I read a lot of kind of feminism, sex, sexuality related nonfiction, and I definitely will get around to reading this one. I also have Pain and Prejudice by Gabrielle Jackson. So this is a book all about the pain that women experience in their bodies and how that isn't taken seriously. And that is definitely a topic that I'm interested in reading in terms of my reading about sexism and femininity, etc. But I think sometimes when I've thought about picking this book up, I'm just like, oh God, do I have the energy to be so angry? Because I know a lot of what is going to be covered in this book is going to make me so mad. I definitely do still want to read this, and I think it's one of those books where I feel like knowledge is power, so I definitely should read it. And slightly similarly, I have Think Like a Breadwinner by Jennifer Barrett. So this was sent to me by the publisher. This is a proof copy, so I really should have read it by now, but it's more about kind of women being financially empowered. And I think it also falls into that category of books that I feel like I really need to sort of be prepared to read in a knowledge is power sort of way. And sometimes I don't want to think. I just want to enjoy my cute little books. But I do think this is an important one for me to read. In Black and White by Alexandra Wilson is a story of one young woman and her experiences of race and class in the UK justice system and what it is like to be a young barrister. This is another one where I feel like I need to be really kind of mentally switched on for it. And that's why I haven't picked it up yet, but I really should. Living and Loving in the Age of AIDS by Derek Frost. So this is a memoir that was also sent to me by the publisher. And I think the reason I didn't pick this one up at the time of it being sent and it being published was because I'd just watched It's a Sin and I felt like I was not emotionally ready to experience another story about those kinds of topics. But I do think it's really important, particularly as a queer person, to be aware of queer history and the experiences of queer people that are older than you. So I definitely still want to read this. It's interesting, I think, when I'm talking about these non-fiction books, there's an element of needing to feel kind of mentally or emotionally prepared in a way that I don't necessarily experience with the fiction books. These last 2 non-fiction books are just, they're chunky. They're big boys. Strange Antics, A History of Seduction by Clement Knox. So I was convinced I was going to absolutely adore this book. In terms of the visuals, in terms of the aesthetics, this is one of my favorite books that I own. I'm obsessed with it. However, I have tried to read it on multiple occasions and have hit pause so much. This is probably the book in this entire video that I feel most conflicted over the fact that I still have it, because I've tried to read it multiple times and had negative feelings towards it. But I just love how it looks so much. If you are someone that has read this book, please tell me your thoughts on it down below, please. And the final nonfiction book is Romantic Outlaws: The Extraordinary Lives of Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley by Charlotte Gordon. This is huge. This is so big. And I do really enjoy non-fiction accounts of the lives of female writers. I find these women's kind of internal and personal lives and careers almost just as interesting as the works that they have published. Before I read this, I want to read a bit more Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley. So I've read Frankenstein and I've read like snippets of Mary Wollstonecraft's writing, but I want to read like a little bit more. And I have some of their books on my shelves unread as well. So I do feel like I should get to those before reading this. But if I'm being hugely honest, was this also a cover by? Sort of. It's so large and I just don't know when I'm ever going to feel like reading this, but I want to keep it. Okay, now moving on to the children's and young adult books that I have left unread, of which there are 6 books. So still left unread on my shelves are Legendborn and Bloodmarked, both by Tracy Deonn. These are books that I got from work. These are the Fairy Loot editions that I worked on, but shamefully, I have still not read these books. And with the 3rd book coming out in 2025, I simply must read these. I hear so many good things. I've worked on the books so closely. It's actually embarrassing that I haven't read these yet. Then I have 2 books from Holly Bourne. So Holly Bourne is one of my favorite, not only young adult authors, but just authors overall. I love her adult books, her young adult books. So I feel quite comfortable having these unread on my shelves. I know I'm going to get around to them. I know I'm going to enjoy them. But I do feel like I probably shouldn't have more than 2, at maximum 3 unread books by the same author on my shelves at any one time. So if I want to be getting more Holly Bourne books, I should tick these ones off my TBR. I know I will really enjoy them. And I do want to read everything that this author writes. Also left unread, I have Hollowpox: The Hunt for Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is the 3rd book in the Nevermore series. So I really enjoyed the 1st book in this series, and the 2nd one I didn't enjoy too much. I think it very kind of typically suffered from 2nd book syndrome, but I do remember really loving the world of this book. I wasn't reading a huge amount of kind of new emerging middle grade at the time the 1st book came out, and it felt so immersive and cozy. Now I do read a lot more magical middle grade, and I do think I've read some magical middle grade since reading the first 2 books in this series that I like more, and I really have just lost a lot of momentum with this series. There is a 4th book coming out in 2025 after being delayed for I think several years, and I feel like I've left such a gap between reading the 2nd book and this 3rd book that I feel like I would need to reread the 1st and the 2nd book before reading this 3rd one, and that to me just does not appeal. So I'm in a bit of a pickle with this one. And then the final children's book is this gorgeous, huge picture book called As Large as Life, which is written by Johnny Marks and has illustrations from Sanjay Pravat. This is a gorgeous, big picture book that is packed full of facts about animals and their habitats. It's actually so silly that I haven't read this one yet, so I'm going to read this very soon. And for the sake of being complete and thorough, the 5 Penguin English Library books I have left unread on my shelves that I bought in 2021 are Sanditon by Jane Austen, David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins, A Room with a View by E.M. Forster, and The Cop and the Anthem and Other Stories by O. Henry. So there we have it. There are all 30 of the books that I acquired in 2021 that I haven't read yet, that remain unread on my shelves. I don't necessarily want to set myself a specific goal in terms of like, oh, if these books are unread by the end of the year, then I should get rid of them. But there are definitely like ones in particular that I feel like if they are left unread on my shelves for much longer, it probably does just mean that I'm not going to get around to them. If you have any thoughts on any of the books that I have mentioned, please do leave me a comment down below, whether that is you loved it or you hated it. I don't mind. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, and that will help inform me about whether I do want to keep these books on my shelves or not. If you'd like to see more videos like this, so if you'd like me to take a look at my unread books from 2022, 23, etc., do let me know. And hopefully I will be reviewing some of these books quite soon. That's it for me today. I hope you're well. well, and I'll speak to you in my next video.